The Pacific Ocean is even bigger than we can imagine. If you were to drill a hole straight through the earth from the coast of Chile, that hole would still come out in the Pacific Ocean on the other side of the earth. Viewers, there are a total of 5 oceans in the world. Out of these 5 oceans, the largest is called the Pacific Ocean, and it spans a total area of 165 million square kilometers. You might be surprised to learn that the total land area of our world, meaning all the dry land combined, covers only 148 million square kilometers. This means that if we remove the other 4 options and talk only about the Pacific option, it alone is much larger than all the mountains, deserts, forests and islands of our entire world combined. In this entire option, there are only a few islands, and they are so small that compared to this magnificent ocean, they appear as nothing more than a dot. And to top it all off, these are the kinds of islands that, for the most part, no human has ever set foot on. So all things considered, if someone were to get lost in this Pacific Ocean, the chances of finding them would be almost non-existent. But today, you will learn the real story of a man who got lost in the Pacific Ocean on his small boat, not just for 10 or 15 days, but for a full 438 days. Yes, this person accidentally set a world record that probably no one would ever want to break, even if they tried. This world record for spending the most time alone at sea was set by a man named Sailor Alvarenga, who spent a total of 438 days at sea, and that too on a tiny 7-foot boat. But the question is, how did he manage to survive alone in the terrifying sea for 14 months? But before that, let's find out why he went to sea in the first place. This story takes place in 2012, when a man named Jose Alvarenga lived in a small Mexican village called Costa Azul. At that time, Jose was 36 years old and he was also an expert fisherman. On November 17, 2012, Jose set out on his small boat for fishing with a companion. Their plan was to spend only 30 hours at sea, which is why they didn't carry much equipment on their small boat. This 7-foot boat had only one engine and a refrigerator in which they stored fish. Taking with him only enough food and drink for one day, Jose had no idea that the next 438 days would be the worst days of his life. They were 100 miles from the coast of Mexico. But just then, a terrifying sea storm arrived there. To save their lives, they left the fishing net behind and ran back toward the shore as fast as they could. For a full 6 hours, they kept the boat speeding ahead, and by 7 in the morning, they were only 20 kilometers from the shore, and they could even see their village. They had left the storm far behind, but now their luck had run out, only 20 kilometers from the shore. "20 kilometers from shore, their boat's engine failed. No oars or sail meant no control. They radioed their boss, sending their location, and waited. Then, every fisherman's nightmare, the radio battery died. Now, both fishermen, Jose Alvarenga and his companion, were still in shock when suddenly something happened that they had never anticipated. Strong winds began to push them back out to sea, and the shore that had been visible to them slowly started to drift farther and farther away. Their boss even organized a search party and looked for them in the Pacific Ocean, but by then it was too late, because as the days went by, Jose and his companion surviving was now considered extremely difficult. 5 days had passed since the incident, and the winds had pushed Jose's boat 450 kilometers away from the shore. They had reached a part of the ocean where, in every direction, there was nothing but water as far as the eye could see. They knew that their boat was so small that it couldn't be spotted even from a distance. They didn't have a flare gun, nor could they light a fire to signal with smoke. That is, Jose Alvarenga and his companion were well aware that their chances of survival were now less than 1%. The food and water they had brought with them had already run out, which is why now, to fill their stomachs, they started catching the birds with their own hands that would land on their boat, or they would catch the fish swimming around the boat and eat them raw. Drinking the salty seawater caused them to become ill. They collected rainwater in bottles for drinking. When rain ceased, they drank fish and turtle blood. If caught, days turned to months. Their mental torture was unimaginable. Eventually, Jose Alvarenga's companion couldn't bear it and gave up. After his suicide, Joe was alone in the vast quiet Pacific. 6 months since Mexico, Joe. He had also lost his companion, which frustrated him. One day, Joe saw a cargo ship in the distant sea. It was the first ship he had seen in 6 months, and this sight rekindled his hope. Joe tried every way to signal the cargo ship, but the crew did not notice his small boat and his hope. Imagine, after fighting death day after day in the middle of the ocean, the water had filled up. Imagine. After fighting death day after day in the middle of the ocean, when you finally see a chance to save your life, and even that ignores you and passes by, how would you feel? After 11 months, Jose had traveled 8,000 kilometers on his tiny boat. His clothes were torn, and all he had left to protect himself from the sunlight was a single undershirt. At last, the moment arrived when fate finally smiled on Jose. On January 30th, 2014, after a full 14 months, Jose saw coconuts floating in the water around him. He realized that there must be an island nearby where coconuts had fallen from the trees and were drifting in the water. A little while later, he actually spotted an island. He was afraid that this island might also slip away from him, so he jumped into the water and swam to the island. In the past 14 months, it was the first time Jose had set foot on land, and when he reached the island, he saw a small beach house with a local resident inside. After 438 days, it was the first time Jose had made contact with another human being. This island was a remote part of the Marshall Islands, known as Ebon Atoll, and it was 11,000 kilometers away from Jose's starting point. This too was a stroke of luck for Jose. He had managed to reach the island. Otherwise, if Jose had missed this island as well, his next stop would have been the Philippines, which is another 5,000 kilometers farther from this island. From there, Jose was sent back home. But as soon as he arrived, another problem surrounded him. Yes, upon his return, Jose published a book called 438 Days, but he was accused of killing his companion and a case was filed against him.